Greetings, traveler. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons with players who have never read the rules before? So you want to invite them to play a game together, but they haven't read the rules, they don't own the player's handbook, they have never played a Dungeons and Dragons game before. They're interested in playing, they just don't know anything about the rules, and it seems like a big commitment to read a 350-page book before throwing the dice for the first time. Or rolling the dice. I have certainly been in a situation like that, and today what I want to do is share what I did to not only get people who have no knowledge of the rules playing and enjoying the game as quickly as possible, but through the game make them enjoy the game so much and get so interested in the rules that they would all on their own pick up the rule book and start reading for themselves. My name is Xanthos. I've been DMing for Dungeons & Dragons for the last 30 years or so. I really love the game. I think it's a great way to enjoy all sorts of fantasy settings with people you like. It's a very social event and I really recommend it. However, what I found out early on when I was starting to play, namely with my friends when I was a kid, I found out that even though I really liked the rules and I really liked reading the books and finding about all these situations and so on in the books, one of my friends really liked that too, but the rest basically didn't like it. We were at school back then, so everybody thought reading books is the worst torture you can inflict upon a human being. So when I said, yeah, the book is very small, it's 350 pages, but you only have to read half of it because the other half is spells. That didn't sound very convincing to my friends. So quickly what I had to do is find a way to not only get them started and playing even though they hadn't read the rules, but find a way for them to enjoy the game. So find the appeal of the game, find what's cool about it, and hopefully get them interested enough to want to read the rules for themselves and find something cool to do. So then I thought, well, what's so unique about the Dungeons & Dragons system? What's so elegant about it? And unsurprisingly, it's exactly I don't know if you can see it, the D20 system. So it all relies on a little D20. So no matter how complex the rules get, it all goes back to the same concept, that when you want to make an attack or when you want to exercise one of your skills, you always roll one die and you get the result as base, and then you judge your success or failure. So instead of going through all the rules and having them read pages and pages of books, instead what I did is I would set up their character sheet based on the general choices they wanted for the character, so the class and the background and the weapons and so on. I would generally try to pick simpler classes, so namely something where you don't have to choose spells or the spells are very easy to use, something like that. And then what I would do is just describe the situation like I would to any normal person. So for example, you're locked up in a jail cell, but you are this very strong fighter or barbarian or this very clever wizard. What do you do next to escape? And then without having any knowledge of the game itself, people could start thinking in logical terms about possible solutions to this. So bend the bars or pick the lock or, I don't know, use a spell to open the door or go through the wall, stuff like that. So naturally, this would bring about the next action. So whenever they would want to cast a spell or pick the lock or bend the bars to the cell, all of these would be tied to an attack, to a spell, to a skill use, and so on. And that is where the introduction of the die would come in. So I would say, well, you need to roll one of these, and I would give them a d20 and say, well, look at your character sheet here. So you're a strong guy, so it should be easy for you to bend the bars. Or you have lots of spells on your disposal. Perhaps you can use this one to I don't know, melt the lock or break the wall or something like that. And after a few examples like that, after a few actions they would take, they would sort of get the idea that anything that you want to do that is a bit of a challenge in the world, first you need to describe it in words, and then you need to roll a dice. And depending on what type of action it is, they would know which area of the character sheet to look at. So is it somewhere in the skill section? Is it an attack? Or is it a pure physical attributes thing? So by doing that, not only I managed to get my little sister and my friends who had no desire to read any books to play D&D, and that was our first group essentially, about 30 years ago. Yeah, very nostalgic. But essentially, even though they didn't know any of the rules, they got interested in the rules, because as any human being, when you do something and you have the opportunity to get better at it, it feels good. So that feel-good feeling is the motivation for knowing little by little what you can do better to make your attacks land more, to make your skills more effective, or to make your spells do more damage and so on. These are things that once players know the context of, they know the power of, they will naturally want to make them better. So after that, to my huge surprise, not only I could play with everyone even though they had never read the rules before, but I started getting questions as a dungeon master about how can I make my attacks hit more, or how can I make my sword do more damage, or how can I learn stronger spells and so on. And that would naturally get me to point at a page in the book, and normally they would only have to read a paragraph or so in the book, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it, you just need to read this little part. But of course, once they were in the book and they saw how one spell works, then they would see the other spells in the section, and they would ask questions, well, how do I use those spells? Fireball sounds really good. I'm like, yeah, it sounds really good, right? So that would very naturally lead them on to a discovery process. That very important thing here, they would be driving. So they would only go as deep as it was enjoyable for them to learn the rules. And before we knew it, basically, everybody at least knew what their characters were capable of and what would be the next step for them to take in order to become more powerful and to enjoy the game more. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope this little trick helps at least one other traveler out there to enjoy the game more, invite more people who have never even heard of the term RPG before to jump in and enjoy it. And I hope you have a lot of fun using this technique. Anyway, to bring it all back together, so when you want to play with someone who has never played before, after creating their character and making sure it's a character that they would enjoy playing, so an archetype they would enjoy, then all you need to do is ask them how they would react in the situation they're in to solve a problem. So how would they open the door? How would they sneak past a guard? How would they solve a riddle? Things like that. And then when they say what they want to do, all you need to do is to link that to one of their attacks, spells, abilities, or base attributes if nothing else works. And that's where the dice roll happens. Then you can explain that all you need to do is roll this one die and link it to your character sheet. Of course, you don't have to be very fussy about the character sheet. You can just read it for them and explain what you do as you do it. So you want to climb, so we're using your climbing skill or athletic skill or whatever applies. And little by little they get the point, they start using it, they enjoy it, eventually they want to do it better, and then they start asking you questions about the rules. You can point them to the book and teach them little by little how to do it, and before you know it, they'll be well on their way to learning the rules and enjoying the game. Anyway, that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have fun.